Hello, chefs. Good evening. We are back again. I'm Isaiah, the young Jedi chef, here with the Dragon Warrior chef, German Lam, and the Phoenix Warrior chef, Noreen. We will be your host for today's podcast. You are listening to a unique podcast where we will discuss tough yet real topics that need to be heard in the industry. In this podcast, you will hear the truth, real, raw, and unfiltered. Today, we have the honor of having Chef Tiffany with us to talk about AI in the hospitality industry. I'm excited to get started and jump right in. So without further ado, I'll let the star of our show, our guest, Tiffany, introduce herself. Tiffany?
Hello, hello. Can you hear me? We good?
You're good. We can hear you.
Awesome. Awesome. Okay. I am so excited to be with you all today. It's a beautiful day outside here, so I'm like feeling really energized and really pumped to talk about the hot topic of AI.
Awesome. We're super excited to have you. Super excited to learn a little bit about AI, about the benefits, and about kind of what people, the negative and the positive about what people think about AI. So super excited. So the question of over AI taking over the world, taking away everybody's jobs has kind of been on people's mind for a long time. However, AI is not all negative. There are many positive things that could come out of using AI, especially in the hospitality industry. So this is going to lead us to our first question. What are some negative associations or assumptions with AI, and how can that narrative kind of be switched?
That's a great question because, in the day where we're living in this fast content, virtual world of social media where a lot of things are synthesized and fabricated, we tend to sensationalize a lot of things, right? And I think, don't get me wrong, there are a ton of really deep philosophical bedrock questions that are currently and need to be answered. They're currently being answered and they need to be answered. But I think overall, at this moment in time, we have sensationalized a lot of the negativity and not really dug a little deeper and understood kind of the building blocks, like the ingredients of what we're working with here. So the first thing I do when I start training chefs or I start working with a company or an organization on implementing AI or talking about how to potentialize AI for them as a co-creation partner, right? As another tool in their toolbox. First, I start digging into what in the world is this stuff? Like, what are we dealing with here? And at the end of the day, we're dealing with Python coding. Like, we're dealing with huge data sets. We're dealing with, basically like a virtual encyclopedia of which the likes we've never seen before. I'm a book person. I have like 10,000 books. And so I love getting in and touching the pages and, getting that whole sensory kind of addiction to the book. But what we're dealing with on the AI side is these huge language models that are like, billions of encyclopedias worth of information that the average nerd would be really excited to have their hands on, right? And we finally have like a multimodal portal to be able to get access to those encyclopedias. So at the end of the day, you've really got to figure out what you're dealing with. Now, beyond that, on what that code is learning how to do and the algorithms and all that, we're dealing with humans that are programming these things and this coding, but we're not dealing with like this Marvel mystery, kind of cyber being yet. Okay. Like we're going to get there, but we're not dealing with that quite yet. So as humans, we have to like take a step back and go, wait a minute here. Like, how can I utilize this to be better at my job, to do all the positive things, right? You don't not get on the internet just because there's bad things on it, right? And it's kind of like it's 1998 and the internet just came out. So what are you going to do with it? So you really have to have like some common sense and some discernment, but also, like let's really sift down what are we dealing with here? We're dealing with salt and pepper and olive oil. We're not dealing with like some kind of booga booga alien, okay? So that's kind of the first step. Like let's have a real conversation about that first. But there are a ton of negative, and you can focus on anything, right? I mean, pick one, right? Pick a negative, and we can debunk it to the degree of putting a little rationality and like pragmatic thought process to it. So, you know.
Mhm. I love it, Tiffany. Yeah, like you said, it's AI is a tool and it should be used that way. And I think if you know how to use it, if you know its benefits, then you'll, like you said, it'll enhance you and it'll enhance your performance and everything about it. So thank you so much for that,
Absolutely.
Tiffany. Noreen, Chef Lam, what's your take?
Yeah, no, I love Chef Tiffany that you mentioned it really like as a tool to enhance what's already here. I
Mhm.
think like people are afraid, and I'm included in this, that are people going to use it as a crutch instead of going and learning history, learning math, learning science and art, they're just gonna go on OpenAI, go on ChatGPT, go on all these different tools and just use it instead of using your brain. And I think taking a step back and remembering, this is human created and human powered.
Mhm.
So we need to take control over a tool that and have it in our toolbox and take guidance from those that are experts in it and see how we can utilize it in our companies, in our schools, without it being the main mode of us in our human interactions, our human learning, and human education, and our art and creativity. We don't want something that's going to take our motivation away from still engaging in those things. So I love it as like, let's use it as a tool, not as a crutch. I really like that point.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I love that. And I like what you said, Noreen, as a lot of people have that association with it's going to take away the tradition of the kitchen, take away the creativity, you know what I mean? Kind of that they still have that old school mindset and they don't want to incorporate like kind of the new technology into what they're doing. So definitely knowing that it's like you said, human made, knowing that it still has that human aspect in it is super, super important. So thank you so much for that, Noreen. Chef Lam, what's your spin?
Chef Tiffany, I love what you just said about the X and O, and I am a geek. I am a book geek here, and mad scientist. But I would say this: AI, it's going to make you an icon. Why? Because it's a walking encyclopedia. But for you to take advantage of, a recipe right in front of you on your laptop, on your computer, on your phone to make your job simplify. First, you have to have a strong foundation. Once you have that strong foundation, and in the hospitality world, what is the most important asset? Our eyes. Our eyes tells a story. It's like the mirror, and it's right in front of you, and it's gonna spit something. You could go, or you could go, you know?
Right.
So that's the thing about AI, right? AI, it's not going to review you. It's not going to criticize you. It's not going to, inspire you. It's not going to compliment you. It's soulless. So you are the heartbeat of AI. And when you have that, you and AI, it's going to be like the yin and yang. You're going to be a great partner because you know what you need to do. AI already does his job because someone just programmed it, But the thing is, it's about you, you know?
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I love that, Chef. I love, like you said, it's that yin and yang. You need to have that balance. Add your personalization to it, add your soul to it, but use that as your, education, as your encyclopedia. I love it, Chef. Thank you so much. So, I believe that AI, like I said, could be used as a tool to enhance our industry and bring new and more innovative things to the table. If we use AI as a tool, I believe that we will be able to be capable of doing more things that we've been able to do in the past. So, what are some of the best ways to use AI in the hospitality industry, or how can chefs use them in the kitchen to aid them day to day? Tiffany, you want to start us off?
Yeah, absolutely. So when I first started teaching AI, and I kind of have like three words I focus on when I teach: intuitive, intelligent, and introspective. Okay. And so you have to have kind of all three going on in your mind at the same time because you want to be super intuitive when you work with this. Like you're dealing with a very powerful set of data. So you don't just want to be like, it's kind of like sending your intern or your new culinary student and giving them a whole bunch of ingredients, say, hey, go make something great. Like you would never do that because unless you were trying to see what what kind of creativity they had in their toolbox, you wouldn't do that with AI either. So getting really specific and really, really pinpoint down on what exactly do you want. So like Chef said, having a lexicon of information as your foundation, that's the most important piece. Like I'm a Gen Xer, so we had to do everything kind of the hard way. Like we were raised by boomers and it was like we had to figure out how to do all this technology stuff because nobody really taught us in school. Like we were all scrappy and gritty and just had to figure it out. So the same kind of thing is happening now with AI. Like you just got to get in and play with it. So to start, I always say, okay, treat this like you would treat your executive assistant or like your sous chef or like your new student intern. Like you have to be specific and detailed, but you also have to know where you're trying to go with this idea. So I love it because we all deal with mise en place in the regular, the everyday working life of a chef, right? So if we start with like a reverse model of mise en place, and this is how I teach educators to use AI intelligently or intuitively, is to start at the end. What are you trying to achieve, right? And then work your way backwards. Of course, we like to use that word reverse engineer, right? We take it backwards from like, if you were done with your mise en place and you walked yourself back to the beginning, what does that look like? And that's kind of how I approach AI and implementing it into a kitchen or operations, or even teaching like an executive chef or a corporate chef how to start utilizing it moment by moment, day by day, week by week, is reverse your workflow back and then use AI to implement strategic, kind of like in HACCP, we have critical control points. We want to use that. You want to treat AI the same way. Like, what are your critical control points that AI would help you with? And so that's kind of like, I try to use the kitchen models, that we're all familiar with from using for the last couple decades, and then just bring AI along on the journey. And all of a sudden, you're 10x in these areas. You can move faster. You can have more, synergy with your workflow. The tasks that may have taken you hours or weeks or months, even by the time you sit down at your computer and start working, you can maximize that time by leveraging the AI resources. You don't get to outsource your brain by any means, but if you bring it along as this sous chef partner, who wouldn't take like 5 sous chefs working for them constantly every single second of the day doing exactly what they told them to do? Heck yeah, sign me up. I'll take as many as you want to give me. So that's kind of the model I try to use when I'm helping chefs get, excited about AI or try to get them implemented. And that's also the way I teach. I have a course with ACF that it's AI for the modern chef. And so that's what all 6 modules go through. We start with baby steps and then we move into like, how do we get our whole kitchen automated eventually? So, but keeping in mind, like we talked about before, the humanity factor. You cannot rob yourself or people on your team of that human experience, the 5 senses, the intuition, all those things that we have. You have to bring that along as a partner.
I love it. I love it so much. And I love what you said about that reverse engineering and thinking about what can I use this for? How can I do this task a little better? Okay, let me ask AI. Maybe they have some ideas, and just kind of using that and then just putting your own twist on it, putting your own spin on it, making it unique. And I think that's what really AI is all about, just using it, like you said, as your sous chef, as your partner, as a guide. And then from there you could take off. So thank you so much for that, Tiffany. Chef Lam, Noreen, what's your take?
Yeah, no, I love the think about where you want to end up, because that is such a great like parallel I hadn't thought about before with AI in the kitchen. Even when you're setting up your station, you want to think about, okay, at the very end, right when I'm cooking, what do I need? Let's start there. Prep that stuff, grab those tools, and then one step backwards, and then one step backwards. So I think a lot of people, they get really interested in AI. I have friends, they work in like computer engineering, computer science, and all of the AI stuff. And it's thinking about what do you need it for? What do you want to accomplish? And thinking about that first before getting into a frenzy of excitement of like, I want to bring all the technology in that I possibly can. You have to do it purposefully, right? Like Tiffany said. So what's the purpose? Is it that you want AI assistance with ordering or tracking your spending, your hiring process? What is it? And then like HACCP, you have those critical points. You as a person still need to go in and check to make sure that at those critical points, your needs are being met and it's done in a way that's helpful and intuitive. So we still have to check in. It's not like this magical tool from Oz that we can just implement and trust it completely and not do our own research and our own thinking and our own, consulting. That's still really important. We're still at the beginning phases and everything is moving really fast. So I like taking it step by step. That's really important. We have to still go in and check to make sure it's doing what we need to. We're still in control. It's our tool. And just keeping that in mind is awesome point.
I love that, Noreen. Chef Lam, what's your take?
Well, think about it. AI is perfect, right? AI is beautiful. I can't hold it. I can't kiss it. I can't hug it. But as a chef, whether you work in the front of the house or the back of the house, it's human connection. And what does human connection do? We make mistakes daily, seconds, but then we know how to create a solution of what's effective, what's practical, what's efficient. So to me, that's the beauty of being a chef, because these hands, you're gonna cut your finger, you're gonna, get them dirty. They're gonna smell like garlic, And AI doesn't give you that connection. And to me, you know, it's more of understand what the body is, what the mind is, what the spirit is, and what food is, you
Mhm.
know, before you could use AI, because AI is fast. I mean, AI, it's going to finish tasks quicker and faster. It's like you can have a whole team right in front of you, but if
Mhm.
you don't have your basic foundations and your mise en place, then AI can't do anything for you. And you're not going to be able to create something where it's going to turn into love.
Hmm. Yeah, I agree. You have to have that kind of base foundation first. You got to be, have that strong skill set, have all that stuff first, and then you could use AI as a tool. But if you don't have that foundation, if you don't have that, that kind of base, then it's going to be hard to use that, because anybody could get a recipe, but then you get a recipe, you follow it, and then it doesn't come out the way you plan it to come out. So that's kind of like AI. You got to have that base, and then once you have that base, the AI will make it a little more perfect, kind of add that extra twist to it. So thank you so much, Chef Lam, for that. So many people, like I said, they don't know much about AI, and I'm one of those people where I don't really know much, but I care to learn. And and then there's some people like you, Tiffany, that really know a lot, that are super intrigued by it, and it kind of motivates you. So what sparked your interest in learning about AI, and how has it been a benefit to you personally so far?
Well, COVID was not kind to many of us, but it was very unkind to me. I was the senior corporate chef for a huge multinational billion-dollar company and was loving it. I'd worked 20 years just to get that job and had left a very stable role with the university, my alma mater at Oklahoma State, where I had just opened this beautiful $30 million facility, and I had employees and students that I loved and a community I loved. And this company had, kind of wooed me away. And anyway, I was loving what I was doing. I was in charge of their innovation and creativity team. We were designing new products. I was working with companies all over the place and chefs. We were at Copia out in California having a big conference on innovation. And then it just stopped. And it was like I was on a conference call with 100 chefs, and we were talking about how we were going to weather through COVID. And my VP gets on and says, "I'm really sorry, but we have to let you and your whole team go." I'm like, "What? Are you kidding me?" So that was COVID. And fast forward now, like, reinvented myself, started my own business, whatever. But I'm sitting on my couch with my kiddos. I have 7 kiddos, and they have a wide age range, 20 to 4. And I was sitting on with a couple of my kids watching TV, and I thought, somebody was telling me about this new Chat GPT thing. This was like late 2022 when it just came out. So I downloaded it on my phone, and I thought to myself, how smart could this thing be? Like, come on, like whatever. Like I had my doubts. Long story short, it was like 2 in the morning, I think, before I had finally gotten like everything off of the desktop of my brain. But I just started. I just typed something into this very black and white, basic, little window of, of the chat bot. And by the time I was finished, I had literally downloaded like years worth of ideation and things that I had, like I said, that were sitting on the desktop of my brain that I had just never been able to flesh out, like whether it be food media ideas, book ideas, curriculum ideas, business ideas that I had. And I just started fleshing them out as if I had like my own creative team sitting here at this boardroom. And I just started ideating. And I went down a rabbit hole here, and I went down. Now, to do that without AI would have taken months. Like, I used to work in food media for Food Network, and if we wanted to get a beautiful dish ready to go for camera, we had to shop, prep, style, and stage that dish multiple times with multiple angles, with very expensive cameras and very expensive people and very expensive time to get to that final shot or that final creative process, right? It was almost like grossly satiating to be able to do that in such a fast, environment, fast time frame, and to have it for the most part about 70 to 80% accurate for what I was actually thinking in my mind to text. That was before they started doing all the images and the video and everything. This was like really early on when it was just text, talk to text or type to text. Since then, it has, radically changed how I work, because it was like, oh my gosh, I finally feel like I have something that can keep up. I mean, you know me, Isaiah, you know how crazy I am. It's like bing, 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 boom, 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 like ADHD on steroids, but in a good way, right? Like every chef is, somewhat ADHD in order to be able to work in the kitchen. But I thought, man, I finally found something to keep up with me that like, so I'll talk to my phone, you know, I have like at least 25 chats going at one time. And I'm like, oh my gosh, I thought about this and this and this. And then when I sit down to do my workflow and I'm in my really deep concentration flow work, when I have to produce actual products and services, kind of like in the kitchen, you know, I have to actually feed people. I go and it's like my time is exponentially maximized because I didn't have to spend time doing all this like laborious low level work that I had to before or had to pay somebody to do it. I could then start from that creativity, high level creative intelligence side and move and go to the action phase much, much, much faster. So for me, it's changed everything. And then I realized, oh my gosh, there's a lot of folks in our industry that are either afraid or they don't know where to start. And so my relationship with it grew very fast because people started asking me, oh my gosh, what are you doing with this? What are you doing with this? How did you make this? How did you do this so fast? You know, and like I'm a solopreneur. I don't have a huge team for my consulting company. I just use AI and I outsource what I need to, but people were inquisitive, you know, and curious about it all. So taking my educator brain, my consulting brain, and then my chef brain and kind of putting them all three into one. And I find that works really well for teaching AI. So
Wow, I never even thought of it from that perspective as, you know, kind of using it as, you know, the bottom people, or using it as those that would be super expensive in a long task. Just, you know, it happens in minutes. You know, I never would have thought about using it in that way. And that way it does all the legwork for you and you just kind of put those finishing creative touches on it. So you can make it human and can make it personal and add that soul to it. So I love
right.
that perspective. Thank you so much, Tiffany. Noreen, Chef Lam, what's your spin?
You know, this makes me think a lot. I think this is where a lot of my personal like fears kind of come out. You know, I hear about, oh, I take this 3, 4 month long process with all these people and all this back and forth and thinking, critical thinking, problem solving, teamwork, and I can do it by myself with my computer. That's great and it's super exciting, but I think it's also that's what induces a little bit of that doubt for me. Because what does that look like when we do it consistently over 10, 20 years? Does that mean that people have to rethink, you know, people that are doing those jobs? Do they have to rethink what they want to do? That could be a great thing, but it could also be very challenging. So I think it kind of goes back to what you were saying before, that we have to use it as an enhancement and still utilize people throughout the process. And shortcuts can be great. And, you know, someone like I was formerly trained in the kitchen through my education, and, you know, I'm still new to the industry, but there are just some things I don't believe in shortcuts. And I think it's important to start even now, even though the technology is new, it's moving really fast. We have to start discerning, you know, what is okay to just fast track the process and what really needs our time and attention. And we shouldn't like jump right onto let's make everything a fast track, because that's, I think, where it gets dangerous. And, you know, it's important to use leadership and those who really understand it, but to also make our own decisions. Like, do I really need this? Or is it something I can think through that's going to make my brain stronger? It's going to make me problem solving, you know, much easier for me. Critical thinking is going to be, you know, a skill I use just like that. So I think like also introducing it later in life, corporations and everything versus schools, K through 12 specifically, you know, and even in like culinary education. AI can tell you how to cut an onion, but it's not going to cut the onion for you. So I think like still that discernment, you know, that's where my wall kind of comes up, and I'm like, okay, let's slow down. And it's opened my mind up a little bit. I do have to think about it, and we are going to utilize it. It's part of our society. But you know, I still have that fearfulness. So it's nice to hear like different ways that we can utilize it, because that's what I'm interested in learning more about.
Yeah, awesome. Yeah, really, it's all about kind of like education and like listening to people like Tiffany and knowing, you know, what ways are good to use it, you know, because a lot of people, like you said, Noreen, are like you, and I was the same way, where you have that fear of, oh, well, it's gonna handicap you, it's gonna hinder you, it's gonna, but really, it's just switching that perspective and knowing, okay, I could use it here, but maybe not here, you know, just knowing where I could use it, knowing what tools to use and what might benefit you is all it's about. So thank you so much, Noreen, for that. Chef Lamb.
Well, you know what? I'm going to use this word, AI's puberty. And think about puberty. You can't fast forward it. you can't pause it, and you can't rewind it. So to me, it's a machine. I wanted to be an engineer. An engineer creates solutions for problems that people can't figure out in the world. But now in society, this is where human really comes in. This is the opportunity where you got a great mind, you got a great heart, you had amazing teachers in education, you had great mentors. Now AI is just gonna kind of polish it for you, you know? And to me, that is something that, have fun with this. Like me, I just said that. How many people would say, hey, AI is puberty? Yeah, it is. You can't fast forward it, you can't slow it down, you can't rewind it, it's like cooking. That minute you make that scrambled egg, it's done. The next one you're gonna make, it's gonna be different. Even though the first one was great, that's how it is, So this is my, concept and philosophy. And I think it's like being a chef. What is your philosophy? What is your principle? And how can you mentor your team where they could be better than you?
No, yeah, that's a good point, Chef. It's kind of like you said, just adding that aspect to it, and that human side, that soul is really what you need. So thank you so much for that, Chef. Thank you for sharing your stories. I believe that eventually everyone will need to learn about AI and how to use it to their benefit. And a lot of people, like we were talking about, resist using AI because they believe it is taking away the creativity and the tradition in the kitchen, like you mentioned, Noreen. So, what is the best way to kind of educate yourself about AI, and what is kind of the best way to access reliable and trusted AI?
That's a fantastic question because it's kind of like when you get started in the kitchen, like every chef has a story from the grandma's kitchen or the mom's kitchen or, some relative, some food memory where they started and they fell in love with it, right? And where this is a little different because it's a technical thing, it starts by just playing. It starts by playing with things and figuring out what your needs are and then plugging those needs in. But I like to take more of like a augmented versus artificial intelligence, because that's what we call it. You see AI everywhere. Vanderbilt University started a lot of this early education and research, and most of my credentialization for AI is from Vanderbilt. And I really like their teachers. They're like you mentioned, Chef Lam, they're very intuitive and they're great mentors. And so they propose the idea of augmented intelligence. Like, right, as chefs, we don't like artificial flavors, colors. Like, we're not into that whole world of food, right? That's a very chemicalization conversation for us. We like to augment the natural ingredients, right? And turn them into things that are much more appealing and appetizing and beautiful and sensational than just the way they naturally are, right? So we don't like artificial, but we do like augmented. And so that's how I try to approach the AI conversation. My course renames the whole AI as augmented intelligence, and it's just how do we think differently? Like you mentioned, the engineer. An engineer looks at something and takes it apart and puts it back together, and that's kind of how I utilize AI with companies and organizations. Is let's take this apart, let's put it back together. So rather than like thinking, okay, I think one of the first areas in our industry that we will see humanoids and robotics and automation in the kitchen will be in K-12. And because I've done a ton of work with the K-12 community and worked with a lot of chefs and changing school lunches, that was a huge focus from the last decade. I've managed huge $7 million USDA grants, and it's always fascinating because we get these amazing recipes, the kids love them, you start seeing all this change, and the one factor is we can't find people who want to work in that industry. It's hard to, hire folks that will work for that pay. It's hard to find, enough skilled labor in that area. So one of the approaches that we're seeing with K-12 is that if we could bring in some robotics or some more technology to do the things that the humans don't want to do. They don't necessarily want to, do this bulk prep. They don't necessarily want to run the rationale all day. They don't necessarily want to be at this, the steam jacket kettle or the tilt skillet, plowing away. But what they do want to do is they want to be interactive with the kids. They want to make this amazing experience for the kids that are coming through their line that day. So what if we lived in a world where you could outsource some of those low, kind of like what I've done, with my kids. I've outsourced a lot of that kind of redundant, not bottom dweller, but definitely not like stimulating, workflow. And I now get to do the things I really love. So what if we saw that in all the sectors of our industry, education, all those other areas, where we utilize it for the things that are not bringing human value in the direct sense, but then we elevate over here. So we pay people more per hour, which is beautiful. And then they get to interact more with the students and give that life-giving, energy and excitement and encouragement. I mean, I don't know about you, but I don't want a robot interacting with my kids. I want like grandma, from my hometown, giving my kids the attaboy as they go through the line. So you're going to see that shift where the human equity and the human ability for things is the augmented solution that we find. And then over here is the automated solution where we didn't have, someone who was hired to do that over there doing that redundant task all day where they're tired and exhausted.
Yeah.
Instead, we paid them a premium for their beautiful human, love and care and interaction. And so that's kind of a one model that's an example of like how to think about AI. Like, how can I bring all those beautiful human, equity to the top and then minimize the things that are just absolutely like driving me bananas. So that's kind of
Yeah.
how we approach it.
I love that perspective, and like you said, it's kind of takes away. I never thought about it that way, but it takes away, like you said, the grunting task of peeling the potatoes.
Mhm.
People miserable on their feet all day, angry. Instead, you could take that money that you were paying them and give it to the people in the front where that are actually interacting with the students, that are actually, you know what I mean, actually there, and personalize their experience a little bit more. So I think that's a perfect idea, kind of those daunting tasks, give it to AI, give it to the ones that, could do it for little to no money, and then pay a little bit more money to the people in the front that could kind of give that personalized experience to the guests and the students. And so
Right.
I love that too.
Right. And you're not eliminating like even the cooks and the validity
Exactly.
tests. Like you still have to taste, smell, touch, hear.
Exactly.
Right. You still have to do all that, but you don't, but you're giving them the higher level. You're
Yeah.
promoting them to like, lead research person, lead R&D, lead, you're giving them these higher level, responsibilities, which is very gratifying for those of us that, like to do those things. So
Exactly. Like, imagine how much more productive you could be if you had somebody to do your prep, AI to do your prep, AI to do this, and you could actually be more creative in the kitchen because you have that more time and more freedom to do so. So yeah, I love that perspective. Thank you so much, Tiffany. Noreen, Chef Lam, what's your take?
Yeah, what stuck out to me was like using the word augmented instead of artificial. That I think is a big mindset shift for me. I'm gonna have to let that one marinate because I never. That's I think the way I would love to see AI is more like augmented. You know, Google and the internet was a huge like innovation in human history, and it's completely changed our access to information
Mhm.
and it ended up being a very positive thing.
Mhm.
So it's just about learning how to use it. The same way you have to learn how to use Google and all these other search engines and filtering out your results and getting what you need is something. Yeah, I hadn't thought about like in that way, and I'll have to marinate on it a little bit more because it's a different way of thinking. Yeah.
Yeah, I love it, Noreen. Like I said, it's all about learning and it's all about getting used to it. Like you mentioned, Google. Imagine the world today without Google.
Right.
Most people wouldn't be able to survive. So, but back in the day, they did it. But imagine how much more powerful we are now with Google. With all these search engines, with social media. So it's kind of everything just has its time. Everything takes time to get used to, but once we get to that next level, it'll be something greater than we ever imagined. So thanks for that perspective, Noreen. Chef Lamb.
Well, you know what? I'm old school, and I always say old school beats new school, and that can mean anything, But let's create a hybrid, create a hybrid, old, new, and for me, I was mentored at the five-star Ritz-Carlton Hotel in Boston, which right now it doesn't exist, it's gone, you know. And to me, I'm going, okay, how would AI come to life? And I'm like, nah, because guess what? You have guests, and what do they want? Theater, entertainment, people, that's what hospitality. But I understand AI and I respect AI, but things could happen is you could get lazy, you could get fat, and you could get stagnant because your brain stops. So in one way, I'm glad that I'm from the old school because I can say, yeah, this is how you peel a potato, instead of buying a peeled potato or instead of, using instant potato. Nothing wrong with it, but it's just like grandma's cooking. Grandma's like, what? Are you crazy? Get out of here. So, Tiffany, you are a walking encyclopedia. Love everything that you talked about AI. So thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much, Tiffany. Honestly, it's been an inspiration and been very educational because before we started this podcast, I didn't know anything about AI. So you definitely inspired me to learn more for sure. So yeah, definitely thank you so much. We have about 3 minutes left. So with the last 3 minutes, what is kind of that last piece of advice that you might have for anybody in the hospitality industry in general, any young chefs, any professionals out there right now? What's a piece of advice that you might have for them?
I would just say, stay curious. Like, all the things we're talking about, you can automate a lot of things, but you can't automate the human experience. And that's what is the most, I think, AI should always enhance the human experience. And as long as you keep that mentality, and it's like anything, right? It can be used for bad or good. But as long as you keep that mentality, like, how can I use this one tool to enhance the human experience? And you do that over and over again, you will find yourself at a place where we have entered, like the dreamland, if you will, of hospitality in the future, where we are able to do the things we always wanted to do. We don't want to be the Blockbusters and the Montgomery Wards, of our industry. We want to jump on it. And that's what I think has been fascinating about teaching AI, especially in the different chef communities. I've got guys that are in their 60s that are, looking at retirement, they're in their golden years. Man, they're cutting through this course like candy. I mean, it's awesome. The stuff they send me, I'm like, wow, like, can you share this? Like, would you be willing to share it? Of course. And then I have students too, they're right out of culinary school and everything in between, master chefs, all kinds of different people. But what I find the most is that it is re-energizing them from a soul level to be more creative, to have more fun, to take more risks, to do the things that are innately human, right? That make us who we are. But it's given them like this superpower in some ways to have more fun. Like that one guy emailed me and he's like, man, Chef Poe, he's like, I feel like I'm 21 again. Like, I haven't felt this way about food and cooking since I was 21 years old. And I was like, good job, buddy. Keep it up, right? He said, and it's because I am now more creative and more excited. So back to your comment, Chef Lam, we can't outsource our brain. We can't outsource any of our discipline or diligence or anything that we have as humans. But what if we had a superpower to be able to enhance it? That's what I would say. So get in and have fun, make it ethical and logical and realistic, do it with intuitiveness and integrity. That's the other I word. Make sure that you have integrity with it, because just like anything, right? You can cheat your way through life, but you won't get very far. And so it's the same thing with AI. Use it as a partner, as a tool, just like you use Word, Excel, PowerPoint, all those things. But keep in mind that we still need very much the human involvement. We need humans to program AI. We need chefs on the different chat bots to be able to feed information and say, oh, that's crud or that's good, or, like giving feedback. That's how we train these models for the future that future chefs will even use. Is we have to have the integrity and the insight to be able to look at that and say, no, that's not good. That's bad. So we need chefs on these different, LLMs and these different mediums, because they're the ones that are going to say no or yes to the future of what's allowed to be on these different pathways and portals. So we need a lot of chefs at the table.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Tiffany. It's been amazing. We really appreciate you, and know that not only the people listening, but the people impacted by those people are really going to take a lot from this. So thank you so much, Tiffany. It's a pleasure. It's an honor, and see you guys on the next podcast.